Florida Republican gubernatorial candidate Ron DeSantis runs up against a media eager to charge him with racism. The Democratic Socialists are on the march, and Cynthia Nixon goes mano-e-mano with Andrew Cuomo. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. So I just want to clarify something. The phrase mano-e-mano doesn't actually mean man versus man. It means hand to hand, okay? So that wasn't a sexist comment that they went mano-e-mano. That's actually what it means. So if you idiots start saying that was a sexist comment, it's just because you're stupid and you don't know anything about foreign languages. So there's a lot to talk about today. But before we do any of that, let's talk about your credit card debt, the fact that you're racking up those credit card charges, but you still need to spend money. Well, the reality is you don't need to be racking up these big credit card charges that have the giant interest rates on the back end. Instead, you need to go visit my friends over at Lending Club. With Lending Club, you can consolidate your debt or pay off credit cards with one fixed monthly payment. Since 2007, Lending Club has helped millions of people regain control of their finances with affordable fixed-rate personal loans. No trips to a bank, no high-interest credit cards. Just go to lendingclub.com, tell them about yourself, how much you want to borrow, pick the terms that are right for you, and if you're approved, your loan is automatically deposited into the bank account in as little as a few days. It's the #1 peer-to-peer lending platform with over $35 billion in loans issued. So go to lendingclub.com/Ben right now. You can check your rate in minutes. You can borrow up to $40,000. I've looked at the process, very easy. Go to lendingclub.com/Ben. That's lendingclub.com/Ben. All loans made by WebBank member FDIC, equal housing lender. Again, no reason for you to be racking up these massive interest charges on a credit card when you could go to Lending Club and consolidate all that debt. Helps you pay down that debt as well. Go to lendingclub.com/Ben, lendingclub.com/Ben to check your rate in just minutes. All right, so I do want to talk about Ron DeSantis and this insane media spin that he is an evil, vicious racist, but I have to begin today with the Pope, who tweeted something crazy out this morning. I don't know what Pope Francis thinks he is doing. I don't know what he thinks his job is. And listen, I'm not a Catholic, so there are legitimately a billion people who know more about Catholicism than I do on planet Earth. Maybe more than a billion people who know more about Catholicism than I do. But the basic information, as it has been conveyed to me, is that the Pope is supposed to be communicating God's word on earth, and he is the vicar of Christ. Is this correct? I think this is the general idea. Well, this does not sound so vicarish, shall we say. Here's what he tweeted out today. We Christians are not selling a product. We are communicating a lifestyle. I didn't realize he was actually guest starring on Mad Men this week. But when Pope Francis says things like, we Christians are not selling a product, we are communicating a lifestyle, he might want to think a little bit about the lifestyle that he and the church have been communicating in the last few weeks. You know, the lifestyle that says that a Catholic Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, can basically run around stooping seminarians and he's not going to do anything about it. That Cardinal McCarrick can molest children, and apparently that means that he should be put back in a position of public importance, and that when other cardinals approach the Pope basically chastises them for it. And there's an awful, awful story that was out today about how the Pope basically dealt with the McCarrick situation. And apparently he made some sort of joke about McCarrick being in the clutches of the devil. This is an article from LifeSite News back in July. Apparently McCormick gave a speech. Let's see. So the story is that Ted McCarrick was speaking in October 2003. McCarrick shared a conversation he had with the newly elected Pope Francis. McCarrick told the audience he had a very serious cardiac incident while he was at the Vatican during the 2013 conclave. When he returned from the hospital to the seminary where he was staying, his phone rang, and it was the newly elected Pope Francis on the line inquiring about McCarrick's health. McCarrick relayed this conversation with the Pope. Quote, I told the Pope that I guess the Lord still has some work for me to do. The Pope responded to McCarrick, but on the other hand, maybe the devil did not have your accommodations ready. And this was retold in a Washington Post story. Well, if it turns out that the Pope was aware of the allegations against McCarrick and he was making jokes about the devil having his accommodation ready in 2013, that's not good. That's pretty bad. And the Pope has stayed silent on all of this. As I mentioned yesterday, the media's treatment of this issue has been absolutely incredible, just astonishing, because the media was all over the Catholic sex abuse scandals of the mid-2000s when we had the Boston Archdiocese, which was caught basically covering up an enormous number of sex crimes. And the media rightly was after the Catholic Church for that, in a way that, by the way, have never been over secular institutions that engage in sex abuse. When it's a secular institution engaging in sex abuse, that's just par for the course. When it's the Catholic Church, then it's a huger deal according to the media. It should be a huge deal in either case. But at least the media was going after the right folks back in 2006. Now, of course, the media is interested in protecting Pope Francis because they feel that he reflects their political priorities. If you want to know what's best for the Catholic Church, never trust the New York Times. The New York Times is a pretty good indicator of exactly what the Catholic Church should not be doing. Because you know what the New York Times editorial board would love more than anything else? For all Catholics to stop being Catholic. They would like to see the Catholic Church utterly destroyed, just as they would like to see Protestant churches destroyed, just as they would like to see Orthodox Judaism destroyed. The secular media has an extraordinary bias against religious institutions that they see as being restrictive and repressive of individual freedoms, particularly on issues of sexuality. So if they're upholding a particular pope, it's a fair bet that that pope is not a friend to traditional Catholic doctrine. And it's certainly fair to say that the pope's activities over the last several months here are creating a serious possibility of a schism within the Catholic Church. I mean, there's a serious possibility here that you could actually see a serious break in the Catholic Church for the first time in half a millennium. That's not really an exaggeration. I'm hearing from a lot of Catholic friends. I'm not even talking about people who are politically conservative. I have a lot of Catholic friends who are saying that this is making them seriously doubt the ability of this pope to continue in his current job. And there's no impeachment procedure for popes. He's there until he decides to step down. So it's a real problem. And the fact that the pope is tweeting out these nonsensical nostrums from Cosmo magazine just demonstrates that he never was fit for the job. I mean, listen, there are those of us who have been very critical of Pope Francis since day one, because it's very clear that Pope Francis had a certain political spin, a Marxist spin, on his own version of Catholic doctrine. And as somebody who doesn't have a dog in the fight, other than I think the Catholic Church is a deeply important institution to the foundations of Western civilization, and I think that the Catholic Church's continued health is absolutely vital to the continuation of central values that perpetuate the power and glory of Western civilization, that's my stake in this. But I don't have a stake in this as a practicing Catholic because I'm not Christian. That said, when I see the Catholic Church being brought low by its own leadership on the basis of political leftism, because whether Pope Francis thinks that he has to appeal to a different crowd in order to raise the rates of conversion in poorer parts of the world, or whether he's just pandering to a leftist press, or whether he actually believes this stuff, what he is doing, it's so obviously undermining the foundations of the Catholic Church that it's pretty astonishing. Again, the New York Times is very pro-Francis because Francis was, every 5 minutes they would run a headline about Francis talking about homosexuality because he's much more to the left on homosexuality, even while still supposedly abiding by Catholic doctrine. They would never run headlines about Pope Francis on abortion, of course, where he is traditionally well within the sort of Catholic doctrine. It shows you where the press is in all this, and it shows you why there are so many Catholics who are really uncomfortable today about the leadership of the Catholic Church. It's a serious problem. Okay, so meanwhile, in the United States, we are fighting over much less serious issues because the future of the Catholic Church is a lot more important than any one election that's happening in the United States. But demonstrating more of the press's just utter incapacity to tell the truth, yesterday the press went absolutely insane over a comment by Ron DeSantis. Now, full disclosure, I know Congressman DeSantis. He's a representative in the House of Representatives. He is the new Florida Republican gubernatorial candidate. He's a down-the-line conservative. I'm friendly with Congressman DeSantis, but even were I not, this is just a bunch of crap. Basically, Ron DeSantis was on Fox News, and he was talking about his opponent, a guy named Andrew Cuomo, who's the mayor of Tallahassee, who also happens to be embroiled in an FBI investigation of the Tallahassee mayor's office. But more importantly, Andrew Cuomo is a very, very left candidate. He's 39 years old. He's basically a Democratic Socialist like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We'll talk in a little bit about what his victory in Florida means and how it happened. But Ron DeSantis was talking about his opponent in this race because it's basically a dead-even race. And here's what Ron DeSantis had to say.
But I mean, he performed better than the other people there. So we've got to work hard to make sure that we continue Florida going in a good direction. Let's build off the success we've had on Governor Scott. The last thing we need to do is to monkey this up by trying to embrace a socialist agenda with huge tax increases and bankrupting the state. That is not going to work. That's not going to be good for Florida.
Okay, so what's amazing about this, did you hear anything in there that sounded really racist? Did you hear anything in there that sounded deeply racist to you? Apparently, that was deeply racist. Apparently, it was incredibly racist. Why? Because he used the phrase monkey this up. Now, monkey is, as used as a verb, is used routinely by all sorts of people. Here, for example, is a clip of Barack Obama using the term monkeying around. Was Obama being racist? No, because when you say monkey something up or monkeying around, you're clearly using it as a verb, meaning like a monkey wrench, like you're tinkering with things. It's legitimately in dictionary.com. The only definition of monkey as a verb is to mess around with. That's literally the only definition. But we are supposed to believe that Ron DeSantis used the term monkey this up as some sort of dog whistle to a bunch of racists in the sticks who weren't aware that Andrew Cuomo is a gay black man. It's an amazing thing. Anyway, here is Barack Obama using it in 2008.
It's not as if it's just Republicans who have monkeyed around with elections in the past. Sometimes Democrats have too. You know, whenever people are in power, they have this tendency to try to tilt things in their direction.
So monkeying around is not an overtly racist phrase. It's not even a racist phrase. Okay, there's nothing about that phrase that is racist, but it is racist because you cannot use monkey and apparently socialist in the same sentence. So even in that sentence, he wasn't talking about Andrew Gillum being black, right, which actually would probably be racist if you use monkey and then you say like, and I don't want them monkeying it up by electing a black candidate. That sounds racist, right? That sounds like you're making an overtly racist comment about the guy you're running against. He said we don't want to monkey up the economy by electing a socialist to lead our state. That is not a racist thing. Honestly, I'm puzzled by the theory. I'm very puzzled by the theory. So apparently the theory is that Ron DeSantis was desperately trying to reach out to the Trump voters he already has in his pocket. Remember, Ron DeSantis ran the most pro-Trump campaign in America. He ran an actual ad in which he dressed his kid, his baby, in a Trump onesie. And according to the media, all Trump voters are racist, which means all the racists were already voting for Ron DeSantis. But apparently it was deeply necessary that he had to somehow dog whistle to these 5 people who were going to vote against Andrew Gillum because he's black by using the phrase, let me just remind you, monkey it up. Like that was his actual idea. That's what he was going for, according to the media. It's an amazing, amazing accusation. Again, so he was using monkey as a verb in a commonly used phrase in order to make an oblique reference to a noun in order to appeal to people who are already voting for him, thinking the media wouldn't catch on, and therefore driving an entire news cycle against him. I mean, just the machinations that DeSantis had to go through, apparently, in order to come up with this racist dog whistle. The genius of it, the sheer genius of it, should boggle the mind. But of course, all this is a bunch of crap. I'm going to talk in a second about the backlash on all of this, and it's so dishonest. But first, let's talk about something a little bit more enjoyable. There's a new podcast out there that has an amazing story to tell. You're really going to like it. It's called Inside Jaws. It's written and hosted by Mark Ramsey, the man behind Inside Psycho and Inside the Exorcist. It is a look at the 1975 pulse-pounding hit film Jaws, the first ever summer blockbuster, and how it was made. I love the movie Jaws. If you haven't seen it, you're really missing out. It really holds up. It's a terrific, terrific film. Robert Shaw gives an all-time great performance. And this podcast is all about exactly how that movie got made. You'll follow Steven Spielberg from making of his first 8mm Western as a young Boy Scout to the rocky production and groundbreaking release of a movie that changed the film industry forever. I mean, folks legitimately thought that Jaws was going to bankrupt the studio because it was so expensive, and instead it ended up being one of the biggest hits of all time. Listen today by subscribing to Inside Jaws on Apple Podcasts or heading over to Wondery.fm/InsideJaws. Or you can listen to the first 4 episodes ad-free by signing up for Wondery Plus at Wondery.com/plus. That's WONDERY.com/PLUS. Wondery.fm/InsideJaws or Wondery.com/plus. Go subscribe to Inside Jaws today. It really is enjoyable. It's really a lot of fun, particularly in the summer months. So the media are not satisfied with simply suggesting that Ron DeSantis is an evil Republican. He's a racist for using a term that is commonly used politically, like all the time. In fact, Andrew Gillum himself, the Tallahassee Democrat, has said in the past that his opponents were like monkeys on his back. So it turns out there are lots of ways to use the word monkey without actually making a racially charged reference designed to elicit a certain response from the evil racists who supposedly make up your base. But that's not going to stop the Democrats from jumping on this in fully dishonest fashion. They did the same thing, by the way, to Mitt Romney. Back in 2006, Mitt Romney suggested that the big dig in Boston, which I was there for this, they were digging a tunnel, and the drill got stuck. It cost them billions of dollars, and he suggested the project was a tar baby, meaning that the project was costing money, and you'd spend the money, and then you'd have to spend more money on it. And people pointed out that the phrase tar baby has a racist history going back to like the Brer Rabbit tales of the 19th century. And suddenly it was that Mitt Romney was making some sort of veiled racist reference about a tunnel project. That's what Mitt Romney was doing. I remember they did the same thing to George Allen in Virginia. There's an Indian guy who was following his campaign at the behest of his senatorial opponent. And the Indian guy following his campaign, not like Native American, like India, from India. And George Allen said something like, oh, you see this guy following our campaign around? I know what his name is, like macaca or something. And then it turned out that macaca was a Portuguese slur for black person. And so people said, well, his use of the term macaca was directed at the Indian guy who's making a racist reference to a random reporter in the back of the room in order to gin up the base in Virginia. And it basically caused George Allen to lose the election. I mean, George Allen legitimately lost a senatorial election on the basis of this. It's why just a couple of days ago here on this show, when we were talking about a British story about men wearing frilly underwear, and the British word for underwear is knickers, Knickers, I had to spell it out and explain exactly what word I was using, because otherwise Media Matters would claim that I was using the N-word. Right? In 1999, there was a guy in the mayor's office in Washington, D.C. who used the word niggardly. Niggardly means stingy. Okay, it has nothing to do with the N-word. The guy was fired for using that word back in 1999. So this is the part of the DeSantis thing that's so incredible, is that the assumption here is that he was using the term monkey this up, knowing that the climate is such that it would completely destroy his candidacy, or at least harm his candidacy, specifically to appeal to 5 people who are already going to vote for him because they voted for Trump, which, according to the media, means they're racists. Yes, I'm sure that the Yale grad and the Harvard Law grad is secretly a deep racist who is attempting to use a Southern strategy in a state he is likely to win already. Yeah, I'm sure that's exactly what he was going for, but that's what the media decide to push out. So here is Andrew Gillum's response. He says, of course, this isn't just a racist dog whistle. It's a bullhorn. It's a bullhorn, which seems, discriminatory against male cattle. But who am I to say?
Well, in the handbook of Donald Trump, they no longer do whistle calls. They're now using full bullhorns.
And that was a bullhorn?
And what I've got to say about that is that we've got to make sure that we stay focused, I think, on the issues that confront everyday people.
That was a bullhorn? My goodness. I think it would be fair to say that the president of the United States has used more of this dog whistling than Ron DeSantis. I think the Charlottesville thing was really egregious. I think, several full episodes on the Charlottesville incident with the president of the United States. But to claim that the phrase monkey this up with reference to socialism destroying the economy is some sort of racist dog whistle or racist bullhorn. You want to know how you got Trump? I know we use this phrase too much, but it's something that the left needs to understand. The reason that Trump is president of the United States is because you cried wolf too many times. You keep saying that every Republican who ever makes any reference to something that has nothing to do with race is actually making a covert racist reference and using Richard Nixon's 1972 Southern strategy. This is the case you're making. You claimed that Mitt Romney was a racist. Mitt Romney. You claimed that John McCain was a racist. John McCain. Right? You claimed all these people were racist. Now you're claiming Ron DeSantis is a racist. You cried wolf so many times over a dog whistle that it turns out that when there are actual dog whistles, no one pays attention to you anymore. Because basically, here's what you do, right? Donald Trump says something that's actually bad, and you guys go, well, that's a dog whistle. And we go, you mean like Mitt Romney was a dog whistle? And you're like, well, yeah, but no. It's like, well, okay, so which were you lying then or are you lying now? Which one is it? And the answer, of course, is that they were lying then. That's the real answer. But here's an MSNBC panel slamming Ron DeSantis. Of course, Jen Rubin, the in-house conservative at the Washington Post. You can't see me right now. I'm making scare quotes with my fingers. Yes, Jen Rubin, the in-house conservative, so conservative that she is now to the left of Bill Maher on many issues. Here she is on MSNBC explaining that DeSantis is a vicious racist with no evidence, of course.
DeSantis is a Trumpite. He fans racial hatred. He fans fear of immigrants. And that, I think, is going to come out in the campaign because that's what these guys do, and they can't help themselves.
I think that it was clearly racist. Look, the remark didn't even make any sense. It wasn't a rational argument or response to the conversation at hand.
What? He was literally talking about a socialist messing up the economy. And then he used the phrase, monkey this up, as opposed to muck this up or screw this up or F this up, right? What? But this is how the media is going to play this. DeSantis is obviously irritated by this. He dismissed the racism charge. He says this is just ridiculous. And of course, he's right.
It has zero to do with race, Sean. It has everything to do with whether we want Florida to continue to go in a good direction, building off the success, or do we want to turn to left-wing socialist policies, which will absolutely devastate our state.
Okay, the Washington Post, however, was not buying this. The Washington Post suggests that it is absolutely true that this is a racist statement. This is legitimately written in a newspaper, right? In a major newspaper in the United States. Quote, comparing black people, particularly tall, athletically built black men like Gillum to monkeys, apes, or primates is one of the oldest stereotypes in history. No one did that. He didn't even use the word monkey as a noun. Like that, what? And then there is a full 400-word explanation of the history of comparing people to monkeys, which is not what he did, right? Leading American scientists in the 1850s embraced scientific racism to conclude that black people's similarities to apes was so significant that it influenced laws, policies, and other decisions about African Americans. Yes, I'm sure that Ron DeSantis is a scientific racist from 1852. I'm sure that that's exactly what he was doing. This idea entered American pop culture at blockbuster levels and thus became more widespread via early 20th century films like Tarzan and King Kong. And images depicting black people as apes became common in anti-black art during the Jim Crow era of government-sponsored segregation. What in the hell are you actually accusing DeSantis of? Are you accusing DeSantis of being an 1850s-style scientific racist? Are you accusing him of being a Jim Crow Democrat? Is that what you're accusing Ron DeSantis, a Florida Republican, of? Is that the direction you're going? And now I guess you're comparing him to Roseanne Barr, who compared Valerie Jarrett to an ape. But this is, I guess, where the entire left media is going to go. I can't imagine why people think the media lied to them. It's unthinkable to me. How could people think that the media lied to them? Now, does that justify the president of the United States saying enemy of the people? No, it doesn't. But does it mean that Americans are less likely to trust the media? You bet your ass. And meanwhile, the media won't cover the actual facts about Andrew Gillum. So now let's talk about Andrew Gillum in just 1 second, because there are some things you should know about Andrew Gillum, this beloved Democrat who they want to prop up to the Florida governorship on the basis of lies about race baiting. We'll talk about that in just 1 second. But first, let's be clear. It is very tough these days to get people to agree on anything. As you can tell from the show, every day we're in the political fight. Every day we're in the political muck. Very difficult to get people to agree on anything. But one thing that we can all agree on is that we ought to be saving money. And the easiest way to do that is to go register over at Honey. Honey is a free shopping tool that automatically searches the internet for the best promo codes every time you buy something online. They believe that everyone deserves the best prices possible on all the stuff they love, which is why it works on over 30,000 sites, including Amazon. Honey has already saved people $800 million online. $800 million, right? It's an amazing, amazing service. The way that it works is that you go over to joinhoney.com/Ben and you install it on your computer, and then you just go over to Amazon or wherever it is you shop, and you shop. And it finds these promo codes and it inserts them for you automatically, and that ensures that you are getting the best possible deal. I've used Honey over at Amazon. I actually bought my wife an Instant Pot at the behest of Bethany Mandel, who writes over for a variety of publications. Bethany is an Instant Pot acolyte. This isn't marijuana, it's an actual pot that you cook with. And I bought my wife an Instant Pot using Honey, and we got a solid discount on it. Honey has 10 million members, 100,000 plus 5-star reviews. Honey members save an average of $28.61 a month. Go get Honey for free right now at joinhoney.com/Ben. That is joinhoney.com/Ben. Again, you can get Honey for free right now. It's a money-saving shopping tool that everybody can agree on. Go check it out right now, joinhoney.com/Ben. Okay, so now let's talk about the real story with regard to Andrew Gillum the media doesn't want to talk about. Andrew Gillum is a socialist. He's a Democratic Socialist along the lines of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, which is to say that he will conveniently praise capitalism when he must, but he will generally say that capitalism is a bad thing, and he will claim that he's not a socialist when he sort of is a socialist. This is the new game that we play if we are Democrats. We say we are Democratic Socialists, which means we don't want to nationalize all industry or abolish the profit motive, unless we're talking to our base, in which case we kind of want to nationalize all industry or abolish the profit motive, but we have to do this gradually. Right? We want to start off like Norway, where we have capitalistic principles, but lots of social programs stacked on top of those capitalist principles. And if it costs just a crap load of money, then we'll just do it anyway. So Andrew Gillum is the mayor of Tallahassee. As I talked about yesterday on the program, the FBI is investigating the Tallahassee mayor's office for use of public-private contracts to toss money to some of Gillum's friends. It is worth noting that Andrew Gillum's rise is paid for by rich people. So Andrew Gillum is making hay right now, specifically because there are billionaires who are backing him. It's also important to know that Andrew Gillum won this particular primary because he was running in a three-way primary and the vote split. So in much the same way that Martha McSally, who won a pretty clear-cut victory over Joe Arpaio and Kelly Ward in Arizona, she won in part at least because that vote was split. I think it was 17% for Arpaio, 28% for Kelly Ward, and the right person won in Martha McSally, who's a good candidate, an Air Force colonel, I believe. In any case, the same sort of thing happened in Florida, where Andrew Gillum won this race specifically because the vote split between two other viable candidates in the Florida race. Both of them ignored Gillum, and he ran directly to the left. I mean, he just ran the inside rail, basically. But he was also backed by literally millions of dollars from liberal billionaires. So Tom Steyer dumped millions and millions of dollars into this campaign. George Soros dumped millions. This is not conspiracy theory. This is reported by The New Yorker. Gillum had recognized that big money in the Democratic Party, Tom Steyer's money, George Soros' money, is now on the left, not the center. Last year, Gillum watched closely as Soros' cash helped propel progressive candidates to victory in several local elections, including the Philadelphia district attorney's race. Gillum was familiar with Soros and his organization, the Open Society Foundation. A few years ago, he helped launch a national network for young progressive elected officials, and the Open Society Foundation was the group's main donor. So this is a Soros guy. He'd been in the financier's New York apartment, addressed his board of directors, and this spring dined with him in San Francisco when the two men happened to be in town. Soros committed to back Gillum's gubernatorial campaign. He says, if I'm remembering it correctly, it was, we don't know if you can win, but we would like what it could represent. I interpreted it to mean that it would be significant to see a person of color taken seriously in a statewide race. No, it actually means that George Soros backs a lot of socialists. I know we're going to turn everything into a color issue, but it has very little to do with color and everything to do with Gillum's economic policies, which are indeed extraordinarily left. And you would muck up the economy. You would screw up the economy if you actually were to embrace all of his policies. Even Gillum understands, by the way, that if he runs too far to the left, he's actually honest about his own ambitions, that he ends up undercutting the economy. So he was asked specifically about his Medicare for All plan. So Medicare for all is what he's pushing. Just like Bernie Sanders, just like Alexander Ocasio-Cortez. Sure, it's going to cost a minimum of $32 trillion, tripling the federal budget over the next 10 years. Sure, it's going to bankrupt virtually everyone in the country. Sure, that's a minimum that it will cost because it'll actually cost a lot more than that. That $32 trillion doesn't take into account renegotiations, doctor pay raises. It doesn't take into account all of the additional costs that will be necessary. Medicare can exist at its current levels because a lot of people have private insurance. You do Medicare for all, private insurance disappears, and the costs are going to be a lot more than $32 trillion. In any case, even Gillum understands that his agenda is too far left, so he's basically soft-pedaling it. Here he is explaining that he won't try Medicare for all in Florida alone because he needs a confederation of states, which is a way to say, I'm for Medicare for all, unless I actually have to bear the political brunt of Medicare for all.
If for Florida to move in that direction, we would have to do it as a confederation of states. We could not do it by ourselves solely here in the state of Florida because it would collapse the system. We would only attract the sickest of patients, and it wouldn't work. Listen, people are terrified of getting sick. They're terrified of getting sick because if they get sick, they can't go to work. And if they can't go to work, they can't earn a wage. If they
paycheck
cannot
away
earn a
from
wage,
poverty
they can't pay
if they
their
get
bills.
sick.
Okay, I love that Chris Cuomo there is actually feeding him the talking points on CNN. Well, you know what you should say here is what you should say is you're a paycheck away from poverty if you get sick. And Andrew Cuomo's like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm sure that's exactly how Chris Cuomo coaches Republicans through interviews as well. CNN, your objective news network. I love that Andrew Gillum there basically explains the rationale for why Medicare won't work at any level. He says all it will do is attract all the sick people who will then overtax the system, and then you're going to have to pay for it somehow. So we'll do it, just not in Florida when I'm governor. So we should do it, but we won't do it because it'll be expensive and it'll bankrupt the system, but we should do it. Right? Yeah, I can't imagine why folks are looking at this as a fantasy candidacy, but it's very easy to promise things that will never come to fruition. Gillum then says, I'm not a socialist. When he's called on all this stuff, he says, don't worry, I'm not a socialist. I'm just a Democrat. I'm just a Democrat.
Yeah, well, I mean, it shouldn't surprise you. It doesn't surprise me that the president is, again, creating fairy tales on his Twitter feed. He's done that quite a bit.
Describe to being a socialist.
No, I'm a Democrat. I ran as a Democrat. I am a Democrat. And frankly, the values that I hold, I think, are consistent with the values of the Democratic Party. In fact, I think they are the values shared by the majority of Floridians.
Now, what I do love about this the most is that there's no follow-up question from Chuck Todd at MSNBC. Okay, so tell me the difference between a Democrat and a socialist. Remember, they actually asked Nancy Pelosi that question. She couldn't answer it. What's the difference between a Democratic Socialist and a socialist? What's the difference between the Democratic platform and a Democratic Socialist platform? And the Democrats won't answer it. So this is just fudging their way out of the fact that their policies are completely out of left field. But Gillum is going to run a strong race now based on a media that wishes to push him to victory. We'll see how successfully the media can do all of that. The irony of all this, of course, is that because of this push to the left that's been happening, at least in part thanks to a left-wing media that loves this kind of stuff, other candidates are also seeing a rise. One of those candidates, delightfully enough, is Cynthia Nixon. So Cynthia Nixon, the former Sex and the City star, whose political background consists entirely of being the least likable member of a cast that included Sarah Jessica Parker, she is going to she's running against Chris's brother, Andrew, and they've been in a running gun battle, Andrew and Chris, for stupidest Cuomo brother. Chris occasionally takes the lead, but then Andrew sort of surges, and we'll see that even on today's show. Right? So what you see there is that Chris Cuomo actually made a strong showing. He broke out of the gate real fast, but we'll see in a second that Andrew Cuomo really makes a secretariat-like pull away at the end here of the show. We'll get to that in just a second, but first, you're going to have to go over to dailywire.com and subscribe. For $9.99 a month, you can get a subscription to dailywire.com. You get the rest of my show, the rest of Andrew Klavan's show, the rest of Michael Knowles' show, if that's something that you're into. Also, you can be part of our mailbag, which we are doing tomorrow, so you send in all your questions, and I answer them for you, and I make your life inestimably better in every possible respect. Also, if you want the annual subscription, then for $99 a year, you can get all of those glories, plus the Leftist Tears hot or cold tumbler direct from God to you. It is just spectacular in every possible way. The Leftist Tears hot or cold tumbler. You will enjoy it. It is also cheaper than the monthly subscription, so go check that out right now. When you do, then you also get our Sunday special. If you go to the YouTube page or our iTunes page and you subscribe, we have Sunday special. Our Sunday special this week is with Professor Ed Fazer, who is a theologian and philosopher specifically with regard to sort of the traditional proofs of God's existence. So it's very deep stuff that we did on the Sunday special. We have a bunch of upcoming guests who are great as well. Christina Hoff Sommers is coming up. Andrew Clavin, actually, is going to stop by for an hour. So we have a bunch of great guests who are coming up. Go subscribe right now. We always appreciate it. We are the largest, fastest growing conservative podcast in the nation.